Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bankroll Burners, the podcast for poker players who can't stop getting it in bad. I'm Mike,
And I'm Josh.
and we are here, as always, bringing you some hands we played badly to talk to you about them, some tricky spots we've been in, some interesting stuff, maybe learn a few things.
But I don't know if we'll learn anything, but maybe someone will get something out of it.
Yeah, they'll learn what donks we are.
Did you get
Uh,
your usual best bet Orange Park sessions in this week?
um, Yes, I had some crazy sessions actually. I was like in the past 2 weeks, I think I had like a plus 2K, or sorry, I had like a minus 2K session, a plus 2K session, and a minus 2K session. Something like, it wasn't quite that extreme, but it was almost that. So definitely some
Wow.
interesting ones, some action games.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
The games up here are not quite that actiony, but continuing to learn more and more about the state of poker here, I'd have to say after playing for a bit more at Encore Boston and then getting up to Chasers in New Hampshire a little bit more. It's kind of there's a really weird dynamic where I feel like the games in New Hampshire, at least at 1-3, which is where I've played, and they still don't really run 2-5 or like one table at most. But when I play 1-3, the players are like the games are consistently better, but there usually aren't that many. It's tough to find like a maniac or like someone who is just completely spewing. But like the regs are like not that good. Like the people who I
Sure.
see there all the time and are like have big stacks, I'm like this person is like a pretty ABC player.
Right.
Whereas at Encore, the average player I would say is better, and like the regs there are good, and there are a lot of people there who I think are actually quite good and like really know what they're doing. But you are also more, and there are way more tables, probably 3x the amount of tables, but you are way more likely to run into a guy who is just like there for some other reason and is
Hmm.
absolutely like, wasted and just like shoving chips in for the fun of it. So it's kind of an interesting decision of figuring out where to play, where it's like, well, I mean, I feel like if you play in New Hampshire, you can really grind it up, in the long term. But at Encore, especially if you table select well, which is tough when there's so many tables, but it's like, if you can find the one with like a couple guys who are just absolutely, you know, spewing,
Plastered.
then you probably have a great opportunity.
And they made the drinks free again.
Woo woo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Lucky you guys.
it is what it is. Okay, well, do you want to start us off?
I do. So I have a hand. So I met a gentleman the most recent time I played at Orange Park who I think is very good at poker. Which is very exciting. Very cool guy. And he's also an action player. He was straddling. We were doing the put $5 on black and red every hand. Him and I, which was super fun.
What a
Super very
great
good.
way. Just let me
Yeah.
interject. What a great way to drive action. I did that with like this like nitty old man, and it even caused him to like loosen up and want to see more flops, even when obviously there's no reason to like let that affect your poker. But he was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
this is fun," and then he started like gambling more in poker, and I was like, "Yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, we were doing it. We were also like, if someone won three in a row, then the dealer got it, and if the flop was, you know, three of the same color, then it was like triple the payout. And if it was all five the same color, it was 5x the payout. So we were doing all sorts of silly shit. So it was a good time. Definitely recommend. And this hand is going to be against that player. So very
cool."
capable player. Uh, Actiony capable player. So we're 8-handed and 500 effective at 2-5. No straddle this hand. Um, so we have an early position limp in this hand. I don't remember exactly the seat.
That's fine.
Uh, and I'm in the cutoff with Queen of Diamonds, Nine of Diamonds, which is well within my cutoff opening range.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Queen of Diamonds, Nine of Diamonds.
Nice.
I'm opening a lot of suited queens from the cutoff. Not all of them, obviously, but a good chunk of them. I would say like probably all the way down to Queen 7.
And are
Maybe.
you tightening up your opening range either at all or significantly based on there being an early position limper?
Uh, Not really not really, given the limper was just not a very good player. If it was like someone who I was like very concerned about, maybe.
Well,
I
if
thought
they're limping, they're probably not someone to be concerned about.
Well, you never know. I mean, if yeah, I guess the short answer is I actually don't really remember anything about this limper. I just at the time was like,
No, I
whatever.
just mean in general, if one person limps, does that affect your opening range? If three people had limped, would that cause you to, tighten up and maybe not raise so many hands? Is that a
Oh,
consideration for
for
you?
sure. I mean, if there were three limps in front of me, I'd probably just limp behind with this specific holding. I might
Yeah.
even I might even fold, possibly. I
I think
mean,
it
just think,
depends on the
yeah,
players to your left.
it depends on the button, yeah. But
Yeah.
I might fold. But yeah, no, with one limper in front, I usually pretty much ignore it. And that's kind of what I did here. I mean, I made it 25 instead of 20.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that I think I did figure that, but I meant more, how might it affect your range, and that makes sense.
Yeah, I think if it, yeah, like I said, I'm opening a lot of suited queens from the cutoff. Not all of them, but a lot of them, and pretty much all the suited kings. So queen nine, I opened it up. The small blind, who is the good villain, cold calls, which is interesting
Probably
because I
restricts
know
his range a decent amount towards. I mean, definitely weights it towards sort of, I guess, small pocket pairs.
exactly. I mean, because I know he's competent and he shouldn't be doing a lot of calling from the small
Although
blinds.
I will say, I think a lot of people, there is definitely a theory where at these stakes and depending on the table, you're allowed to do more calling from the small blind just because, like, at the very least, you're never going to get squeezed. And I mean, if he knows you're a competent player too, then he probably shouldn't be doing it. But especially if you think you're actually going to get to realize your equity, there are times when you can somewhat call more in the small blind. But I've kind of come more along to your side of what, just if you're in the small blind and you want to call, just like raise and get a
Just
heads
raise.
up.
Yeah, well, so I guess a couple notes on that. One, funny that you would say that, oh, if he knows I'm a competent player, you mean if he's like drunk off his ass? But no, I mean, because I'm not. But he knows
A
that
thinking
I,
player.
yeah, I'm a thinking player. That's right. That's what I am. So he knows that about me. He has gathered that from a couple of hands that he asked me questions about after the hand. Um, so yeah, I think he wouldn't just assume that I'm going to be very passive. He's seen me get after pots. I also think I've seen him three bet a lot, including with some marginal hands from from something like the small blind. I saw him do kind of a pretty light three bet from the big blind when there were some limpers in the way, so it sort of like three betting from the small.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely think that this is pretty restrictive to his range that he did
Sure.
those. And I was thinking about that a lot during the hand. And then
Okay.
the limper comes along.
Cool. So we're going three ways. We're gonna have 80 in the pot.
Yeah, just about minus the rate.
Minus the rake. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay. And yeah, I think pretty standard. Definitely good note on It's interesting that when you have a competent villain, you can actually sometimes do more to narrow their range because of how they might play other parts of their range.
yeah, absolutely. So, um, anyway, flop comes down now. We've got nine of clubs, four of hearts, three of diamonds.
Okay. Pretty decent flop. We make top pair.
Yeah, we have top pair, vulnerable top pair. Um, I think it checks to me. First of all, no one leads this flop, which I'm not surprised. I actually think probably they might be allowed to on this given board, but because they can definitely. I mean, I don't know. They really shouldn't have much two pairs here, but they will have more like fours and threes. I don't know. It's sort of interesting.
Yeah, like, probably more fours than threes, but like we just still have like a very big range advantage. So
Yeah,
just
yeah,
having all the overpairs and really neither of them should have any overpair to the board.
right. That's true. No one should have like tens. I mean, I've seen people limp call with tens, but
Oh, I mean,
certainly,
me too. I
certainly
was just telling you
uncommon.
about a hand where a villain limp called with queens. So
Oh yeah.
depending on the live reg, it's certainly possible.
Yeah, no reads on this limper. So
Yeah,
I don't.
so fine. I think we probably have the best hand most of the time, and we
I
are
think
vulnerable.
yeah. So I decide. So it checks to me, and I do decide to bet this. I think like from a range perspective, I don't think checking. Like I think I maybe should check here. I might want to check like certainly my strongest hands here. I would check like nines. I would check. I might check threes and fours. Sometimes.
To be honest, I would probably still be. I would definitely be betting threes and fours, And I would probably be betting nines. I've kind of been thinking like a lot more about, I mean, you really just have to build a pot. It's like, yes, you're like an opponent probably doesn't have a nine, but if you bet, I think a good rule of thumb that I heard, I think from Bart Hansen is, if you're gonna check in a live game, just bet small instead. Like if you're gonna check for deception, just like bet really small, and you'll probably get called.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily looking to check for deception exactly. I'm more just thinking about balance because like I'm gonna have so many misses on this board. So I'm trying to think like if there's any misses I want to check, I have to check some made hands. I mean, maybe I would check ace nine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes more sense. Ace nine, or I mean, if you're gonna pick some strong hands to check, like aces is like probably the best one because it's like the least vulnerable. Where there's no overcards that can come out.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair.
But you also don't need to bet all your misses multi-way, I would say. I would add.
Right, for sure. But I'm saying, yeah, that's true. I mean, but I'm not going to check. I don't really want to check all my misses either. So
no, of course, I think there is some balance to be had, and I mean, we can probably bet as thin, for bluffs as thin as like 10-8 with a backdoor or Jack 10 with a backdoor.
All day.
Yeah. Okay, so we decide to bet here, which I think is fine. I mean, it's a vulnerable hand. There are certainly some draws out there and some bluffs, and our opponents really shouldn't have too many strong hands here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do. By the way, I do agree with your point about betting threes and fours. But anyway, I do bet. I bet 25. The competent villain calls in the small blind, and the limper folds.
Great. So we've got a heads up, which is nice. It's if both players call, we kind of like start hating a lot of turn cards.
Yes, for sure.
So I'd like getting a heads up for sure. Still in position, top pair. What could go wrong?
Yeah, and once again, he can really have like this sort of board is so great for like the range we think he has, which is like 8s through 5s. It's like we can definitely get value from hands like that on this board. So anyway, the turn now comes the 2 of hearts, little duck, which puts out quite a lot, which brings in a lot of backdoor draws.
It does. I mean, any ace has a draw now. I mean, hearts. That's all I would really expect him to have. I guess pocket 5s and pocket 6s now pick up some additional equity.
I also think, yeah, exactly. Pocket 5s, pocket 6s have some more equity. Yeah, and so he checks to me, which makes sense. I don't see him leading this card, maybe with exactly ace 5. I don't know, but. What do you like here?
I think I like betting. I mean, it's introduced so many draws. I kind of want to bet, honestly, on the larger side.
Interesting.
I think our hand. I mean, I think our hand is still is quite vulnerable. I mean, not that much. Like the deuce doesn't really change all that much. Like, yes, it is a nut changing card, but like I don't think our opponent should realistically have 5-6 or ace 5, especially if he's like a good player who is probably not making these plays, and I don't really think he's gonna like fold a hand that picks up additional equity a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I was concerned that I could get raised on this card and not like it. I did not really want to get raised on this card. I didn't really want to be in a situation where I'm playing for stacks with sort of a marginal top pair type hand. That was sort of what I was thinking. Do you think that makes some sense?
I mean, I think it does make sense, but I just think he's repping such a narrow range when he raises. Like, there are, as you pointed out, like, this card, this deuce of hearts, like, just brings in so many draws that, like, it feels, I mean, if he's raising, if he's, like, a pretty aggressive player, then it's probably an over-bluffed spot, if I'm being honest, from his perspective.
I think that's fair. I guess, like
he really only has 4s and 3s as value hands.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, he can have 9s also.
Okay, yes, but from what you've told me, he's probably 3-betting 9s against a cutoff open from the small blind, and there's one combo. So I'm not, if he has 9s, then whatever.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that we could bet here to try and get called by draws. I think we put ourselves in some uncomfortable positions, because like. I agree with you that it's probably a little over bluffed, but like if I'm like wanting to go after a spot that's over bluffed, I prefer to have like a much stronger hand myself.
But I don't think I don't think this hand is weak. I would rather have queen nine than like tens or jacks here. We have a lot more outs to improve, and we're blocking like we're significantly blocking one of the strong hands he can have.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I feel like a top pair, if he's repping a set or a bluff, then it's like it doesn't really matter if we have an overpair or top pair. And actually, if we think he might be calling nine sometimes, then it's actually better to have top pair here.
No, that's a good point. Okay, well, I did end up checking here, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't think checking here is awful. Like, I don't mind keeping the pot small when, like, the nuts... There are obviously a lot of cards that can come on the river that can change the nuts, but, like, I do want to charge those hands, like, on the turn. Like, I don't think he's going to fold, like, pocket fives now, even if we bet, like, 100 here. Because I do think, I mean, obviously we have a lot of value hands in our range, but we also have a lot of, like... We probably have a lot of bluffs here also. Like, we can definitely have a lot of heart draws in our range that continued the flop. We can have some like suited broadways that pick up a gutter, like ace X type of hands that pick up a gutter. So I just think especially if you're playing somewhat balanced and you've been showing and you've had like bluffs, you've been bluffing and he kind of knows that. Then I just don't think we're gonna get the hands that we want to call us will probably call a large sizing, and then we can always evaluate the river. Like, that's the nice thing about like betting turn is like, what if the river rolls off like a 5 and he leads?
Right. That's that would be interesting. I think if the river rolls off, you mean if we bet?
No, if we check back turn, this is like kind of my problem with checking turn is that it's like there are so many bad river cards that like we just what would like if as played if the river rolls off a 5 and he bets, like, are we just folding?
No, it depends on the sizing, I suppose.
Yeah. But, I'd rather get the value now and have the option to check back river most of the time.
Sure. I think that's fair. Well, I do check, and I guess, like, part of me also, at the time, I was thinking, like, I need to have some stronger hands in my checking range than against a player like this than I would against a random person. So I would I should check back some top pairs, so I have some top pairs in my check back range versus because against like an ABC person, yeah, I'm betting this board. First of all, they're never going to raise me anyway, unless they have the nuts, in which case I can just fold. So,
well, it's interesting though, because against an ABC player also, they actually have a stronger value range, like a wider value range. Like, because I think ABC players can have ace 9 and king 9 and 5-6 and ace 5 a lot more than like a competent player who cold called out of the small blind will have.
Sure, but they also have a lot of like worse hands, like 9-8 offsuit.
That's true. There are a lot of nines in there in general. So I think I just like betting. It's something I've been trying to work on is in position when your hand is like very strong but vulnerable, just like going for value and taking kind of larger sizings, and then also, especially, it's so good if you're in position because most of the time it just buys you the river decision.
It's so funny that you say that because like I always do that, and I've been trying to work on doing that, like balancing my range and not going for value as hard all the time. So it's like
but like again, you can also take a large sizing. Like you can balance, right? Like you have, but I see your point that like are we doing that with all our value hands? But
right.
So you could probably go either way. As I know we both saw this wonderful tweet from Phil Galfond earlier this week. That was it spelled out the death of Bankroll Burners, where he said there's no point in reviewing marginal hands because if they're marginal enough for you to think about, then any decision is probably fine.
Right, and you're losing all your money in the hands you're not thinking about. So yeah, Phil Galfond indicting our entire existence here. So thanks, Phil. I feel like Doug Polk.
Oof! Shots fired. All right, so fine. So we check back the river or we check back the turn, and the river is
the 7 of hearts.
So this pretty much changes nothing except if he. Well, no, it does change quite a bit. It's 7 of hearts. It completes a flush.
Also, yeah, I was like, it definitely changes something here. Yeah. So villain now leads.
Sure.
for $200.
Wow.
Yeah. So, overbet. Big overbet.
So he's pretty much saying he has a flush here.
That's what he's saying. Because I didn't really think he would do this with a straight. I thought like ace 5 or 5-6 were unlikely.
I think the point is those are unlikely. Do you think he'd do this with a set?
Probably not.
Because I think he can do this with a set.
You think he's allowed to do this with a set and a straight?
Because I think once we check back the turn, I think that we're going to be we have to be betting most of our flush draws. We have to be betting.
We actually don't. We don't have to be betting like ace king, ace queen, ace jack of hearts.
That's true.
Or diamonds. Or sorry, not diamonds. What was I talking about? Yeah, hearts. We don't have to bet those. I actually would check those back a lot.
Okay. I mean, yeah, but I do think he can probably, maybe not to this sizing, but I do think he can bet. I don't know. That's interesting.
Well, but the point is though, like, yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. Like, what are the bluffs here? Like, this is what I sort of went back to pre-flop and I was like, what's he cold calling with here as a bluff that he's now bluffing with? And my thought was like sixes with the 6 of hearts was a possibility, I thought, or like eights with the 8 of hearts,
or fives, because fives
sure.
even double blocks the straight, which is even better.
Yeah, so I thought those were possibilities. I think probably like, I don't really know how many like ace x with the ace of hearts he has given the cold call pre-flop. I think none.
And how many flushes does he really have given the pre-flop cold call? Like, do you think maybe it's like ace 9 through ace 6 of hearts? Because like I think most people who have are 3-betting at a reasonable frequency are doing so with like the suited wheel aces and with suited Broadway aces. So maybe like the ones in between he's cold calling with.
You're probably not supposed to take this sizing with like ace 9 of hearts because you block top pair.
Yeah, I mean that's true. Although I wouldn't be surprised if I would probably take that sizing even with that in mind. Just
sure.
I think that is probably true in theory, but I would say that most players, and I myself included, would probably gloss over that fact and say I have flush, I bet big.
Yeah, that's fair. No, it's definitely interesting. Like, I wasn't really sure what flushes he had. I did think. Yeah, I thought like this is the thing though. I was like 6-7 of hearts. Well, you can't have 6-7 of hearts, right? Because the 7 of hearts is out there. 5-6 was already a straight, so I guess that is still possible.
8-9 of hearts.
Yeah. Again, probably not the best hand to do this with, but yes, possible. I just didn't think there were that many flushes, but I guess more what I was thinking in the moment was about like, what better hands do I have to call with here? And I was like, first of all, I want to have a heart, which I do not have.
Right.
I think like over pairs with a heart are the best hands to call with here, undoubtedly. I would say.
Yeah, I still think I don't know. I'm trying to think if he can do this with like a set after we check back. Like, it's kind of interesting. Where I'm not convinced that this is always like flushes or nothing.
Yeah, I think he could do it with a set, in which case like having a 9 is good because we block 9.
But we're not opening up the whole ton of offsuit hands containing a 9. So to your point about what better hands do we have to call with, it's in like we'd want like a hand like a top like ace 9 with the ace of hearts, but that's I don't know if we're
I might jam that hand as a bluff.
Really?
Yeah,
but like we beat
I've thought about this a lot. Like I might.
But we just beat all his bluffs, and I don't think he's folding. I doubt he's folding a flush when we started with 100 big blinds.
He might fold a flush,
and he's getting insane odds.
If we jam here, right? Because we have to jam.
We're jamming for half pot.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is like I don't see how anyone would fold. I mean, it's a small. Again, we started with 100 bigs.
Yeah, it's fair. I don't know, but like I actually think having the ace of hearts here might be bad, because I think most of his bluffs contain the ace of hearts. That's kind of why I thought it would be bad to have the ace of hearts.
That's interesting because I don't know. I don't. It's tough for him to have, as you pointed out, it's tough for him to have offsuit aces in the small blind cold calling.
Also true. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's in that case good to have the ace of hearts.
But
Yeah.
it's also tough for him to have suited aces.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I can
don't know.
clearly not drink the wine in front of me.
I was so stuck on this hand. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I guess I was like, how many better hands do I have to call with? Like, really not many as played. Like, I would check back some over pairs containing a heart on the turn, but not that many. So I think, like, top pair, just having top pair is, like, pretty darn good because I will have, like, lots of literal air here. I will have literal air, which I can obviously fold easily.
Right.
I will have
That's true because we could see bet air that, like, some other backdoor that we checked back the turn because we didn't pick up equity, and now we can just obviously snap fold river.
Right, so I will have a lot of terrible hands here. So I figured like having top pair is actually pretty good. I think I would rather have like probably like ace 3 or ace 4 suited because I block sets, but like
but then we like lose to some bluffs. If you think he's bluffing with, you said if you think he's bluffing some of the hands he's bluffing like 5-5 and 6-6 with a heart, then it is nice to have top pair because at least we beat all his bluffs.
Right. So so that's a good point. So in game, I concluded that I think my hand was just supposed to be a call.
I think I'd probably call here. I mean, he's an action player. Like it's definitely an interesting scenario, and I'd probably wind up calling, getting curious.
Yeah, I do call.
Okay.
And we get shown Jack 10 of hearts.
Jack 10 of hearts. Okay.
Yep. It's definitely a hand you can play as a mixed strategy from the small. So.
Yeah. That's definitely fair. If you have a calling range from the small blind, Jack 10 suited is not a horrible hand to include in it.
Yep. So.
Of course, I say this as someone who calls out of the small blind much more than I should. So.
Yeah, stop doing that.
Well, I've been working on it. I really have.
Good.
But it's like sometimes it's just like so attractive.
That's true. You get such a good price. All right. Well,
one more thing. I just kind of thinking about how, if we had played this hand a slightly different way, back to when we were talking about the turn, and thinking if we had bet like 100 on the turn and he had called and the river peels off the 7 of hearts, if he checks to you, would you be going for thin value or against this player?
No, I'd check it back for sure.
And if he leads, I mean, I guess we probably have to call anyway. Well, I don't know. Like check, call, lead. You know how we feel about that.
Yeah, if he leads river, it's pretty interesting. I might fold.
Just thinking about the conclusion of this hand as we think about the turn.
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible betting turn. I'm sort of agnostic on betting turn. I see a lot of your points for doing it, and I certainly would do it sometimes. I think, I think I could have bet turn. Maybe would have helped me out there. But
it's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear that you're kind of moving away from it. And trying to be more balanced in your checking and finding some top pair hands and stuff like that to check back. But I really kind of think that to your other point, I think like if we bet turn and he raises, we're just like allowed to call.
Sure.
Because he has so few value hands.
We're probably getting an insane price on a river jam at that point.
Yeah, I mean, then if a heart comes on the river and he jams, like, okay, sucks to be us, but like, we were ahead when we put it in when we got in on the turn,
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay.
All right, so I've got a hand from Encore Boston Harbor. The villain in this hand is a quite interesting villain. He's a kind of younger Asian guy. He is raising a lot of pots. He's playing pretty aggressive. He has also been playing for 17 hours at this table, and he has a stack of about 2.2k.
Okay.
So kind of a fun note. Everyone was like, "Wow, I can't believe you've been here for 17 hours. How are you?" The dealers would come by and be like, "How were you awake?" Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the effective stack here is going to be me. I've got about 440. The table, other than that, I would say is pretty typical. A lot of like limping, calling. Like he's really one of the only ones doing a whole lot of raising with a bunch of different hands. And the way this hand starts is it's 1-3. There's no straddle on, and he opens to 15, as he's been doing a bunch of. From the low jack. The hijack calls, and I am on the button with ace 5 of diamonds and make it 55.
A little small, right?
It's a $5 low. Sometimes I don't necessarily, especially if I'm on the button, like I don't mind going a touch lower with like if one of the like if there's a random flatter in, because I just don't think they're going to be calling a whole lot regardless.
Fair enough. Okay, sure. So,
but he's been opening a lot, so I'm like, this is a great time. I'm on the button. I've got the premier candidate for 3-bet bluffing.
Yeah, absolutely. The famous ace-5 suited.
And only the low jack calls.
Cool.
So we've got basically 125 in the pot, including the. Let's see. Yep, we got about 125 in the pot. We've got about 385 left behind, and moving on to the flop, which is a pretty interesting one, as I feel like I say a lot, but why would I be bringing these hands on if they're not interesting?
Okay.
So the flop comes ace of clubs, king of diamonds, jack of hearts. So kind of interesting flop. We've got top pair with a backdoor flush draw. Obviously no kicker. And he checks it over to me. So I think we pretty much have to continue on a board like this.
Yep.
It's a 3-bet pot, especially. Honestly, I might find some checks or some checkbacks in a single raised pot, holding a weak top pair. Like, it's definitely quite a dynamic board. And we can kind of navigate later streets. Like, we'd probably just call down later streets if he starts betting. But in a 3-bet pot, I just think we have to be betting here.
Agreed. I think you have to bet. I think you should use a pretty small sizing.
Yep. So I bet 35 into 125.
Yeah, I like it. I might even go a hair smaller.
Yeah, it is a hair smaller. I was kind of thinking, like, this board is so good for my range. There's no reason to bet big. We can kind of try and keep all his hands in, or all his paired hands at least. And he calls. So now we've got 195 in the pot and 350 behind. And the turn comes the 8 of spades. So it's pretty much a brick. It actually completes the rainbow. So no flush draws are available. And he now checks it back over to me.
Interesting.
I don't know if we should really. I don't know if we should be betting here. I think we're actually. In our 3-betting range, we're pretty far down it.
Yeah, it's tough to start thinking what you're going to get called by that's worse, I guess. Like, there's like queens probably, and like jacks.
Well, jacks are a set.
Sorry, jacks is a set. So it's just like queens. Yeah, so I think I would just check here.
Yeah, maybe king queen. Do you think king queen would call a second barrel here?
Well, maybe, but he also might check raise that hand, and I don't know that you're particularly wanting to be check raised here.
No, I'm obviously not. And in the moment, I was kind of thinking, how can I go for value here? Like, how often is he going to raise on a board like this? And like, maybe I think I just don't know if he really wants to raise. I'll do a whole lot of raising on this board, given like how much it smashes me.
Yeah, agreed that he probably isn't raising a lot of hand. But this is the sort of villain who might raise you as a bluff for sure, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So he's probably not doing a lot of raising, but if he has some raises here, I don't know. Some of the hands that you're hoping to get called by, I think certainly you might get called. They might call you, like an ABC player might call you with them, but you might get raised here. So I don't know. I kind of like a check back.
Okay. I do wind up checking it back. I kind of think like, yeah, my ace is like super weak. Like, if he's doing a whole lot of calling us on 2 streets in a row, then like he's probably weaker than an ace. I did wind up checking it back. I thought, if he does have a hand containing an ace, he's obviously going to be calling. If he raises, I can't really withstand a raise. And like, basically the options are like, if I bet big, like I'm going to pretty much isolate myself against hands that are better. And if I bet small for a second consecutive street, then it really opens myself up to getting raised as a bluff.
Yeah, exactly. So I think your check is good.
Okay. And now the river, I think the most interesting decision of this hand comes on the river. So glad we've motored right along as the river rolls off the ace of hearts.
So we make trips.
It's worth noting, we're now chopping with any ace worse than ace jack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is
and here's where things get really interesting. He bets 50.
Okay. Just he bets 50. Okay.
So for reference, the pot's around 200, and for anyone just listening, we've got ace 5 of diamonds. We 3-bet from the button against a aggressive player who opened the low jack. The flop came out ace, king, jack, rainbow. We have a backdoor in top pair. We bet. We c-bet a little under a third, and he called. The turn was an 8 of spades and went check, check. And now the river, there's 200 in the pot. We've got about 350 behind. And our opponent has just led into us for 50. We are sitting here holding trips with a kicker that doesn't play. But his bet is quite small. And obviously I'm not folding here, right? My decision here is really between call and raise.
Yeah. I wonder what he's doing this with. I mean, it's such a blockish sizing. Like, he could be... It seems strange for him to do this with an ace, I guess.
Right. I tend to agree. I think the most likely hand is probably just like a random king. Like king queen, maybe king 10. Like one of those, like king queen suited, king 10 suited. Maybe queens, but I also think this villain would be 4-betting queens a lot.
Sure, and I will say too, like, if he does have an ace, like if he has like a boat here, rather, if he's made a boat, I think he would take a large sizing, probably, given that he's aggressive, and even a lot of non-aggressive players would probably take a large sizing. So I think that you're right that he probably just has some sort of second pair type hand. I think that if you were to raise here, I mean, I don't know, he might get curious and he might just fold. As long as you're not really afraid of if you're planning to call down a jam, then I think you should just. I think there's no harm in raising. I think I would probably raise not very much. I'd probably raise like 100 on top, maybe.
Do you think we can like jam here?
What's your reasoning for wanting to do that?
Well, if we're gonna bet small and we think he's gonna get curious, I mean, players get it a lot of times. Like play like that. When people just like jam for like a silly amount, and this, by the way, wouldn't even be that silly of an amount. It would be like it would basically be a pot-sized raise if I were to jam. I think that players might kind of level themselves into a call a lot with like a second pair type holding, especially when I check back the turn, and that's kind of something originally I was thinking. Should I be betting? Should I be raising? Is there some play to raise small here? But I think a raise small just like is like going to get called so rarely by like a king or a jack or whatever he's kind of blocking with.
I don't know that you're right that a small raise is going to be folded to. I think like he might, if he's sort of a thinking player, he might be like, oh, the price is so good. He might I think you open up a chance for him to make a mistake. I think the problem with a jam is it's so easy to rationalize a fold.
That's true.
That's just so easy. It's like, well, muck it, But especially if someone's some sort of stubborn old guy who thinks that you're pushing people around, maybe he would call. But I think if this guy is a thinking player, he's just going to be able to be like, well, I guess I'm never good here. So, but I think if you just made it small, he's like, I don't have to be good that often. You might just flick it in.
Do you think if I jam, I'm ever folding him off a chop? Like if he has ace 10 and I jam, do you think he is ever going to find a fold?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I just thought it was a really interesting decision. I actually I landed on call. I basically thought I just think when he does this bet, like I'm just never getting called. Like if he's kind of using this block sizing, he's probably bet folding anyway because like he knows that I can have some aces in my range. So I eventually think about it for a while because I kind of think about the various different raise sizes. I probably like a small raise, but then that does commit us to a jam if he is. But I mean that's probably fine,
right? To
call a jam. But I decide to call, and he basically like shakes his head and mucks.
Oh, so he was just bluffing.
Yeah, I mean, basically he looked really reluctant to show his card, so I just showed mine because he was definitely. I mean, he wasn't like a GTO wizard as far as I could tell. He was more just like a fun player who was running super hot and enjoying a nice long session. So I didn't feel any need to like see his hand. I was just like, sure. Yeah, I have an ace. And he did muck. So maybe he had like a jack. Like I feel like he probably would have shown a king quickly. But you know,
Yeah, I mean, I guess also if he's just bluffing, I mean, whatever. I don't know.
yeah,
But
it's just one of those spots where I was like, this like bet is so weird, and honestly, it does kind of make sense for him to take the size with a bluff sometimes, maybe, because it's like if I like, you know, precisely for kind of the reasons we're talking about, where like if I have nothing, like I'm obviously gonna have to fold. Like there's so many overcards to like, you know, there's certainly a portion of my three betting range that's gonna just be like garbage here, um,
not
and
much
it's
of that.
and it's tough to raise for value because of the sizing. Where I'm like, well, if I just don't feel like I'm ever getting called when I raise. So
No,
just
I actually really don't think it makes sense for him to take the sizing as a bluff because I actually think you would probably call with like a lot of hands. Like you
yeah,
might
but am
even
I calling with like tens or like Jack 10?
maybe,
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 maybe.
yeah, I might for sure for getting 5-1, sure.
Yeah. I think it's just a kind of an interesting spot where I was definitely not sure what to do and what value I could get. But I think again, you know, another spot where, you know, it's probably reasonable to go either way, but wanted to hear your input you know, especially as a common theme of our podcast recently has been how to get how thin can we go for value.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna step away quickly because we have a guest for you, a returning guest, a famously returning guest, everyone. So stay right there. All right, everyone, we are back with our special returning guest. It's Aath. Say hi.
Hey,
Aath.
what's up, guys? Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were here last time, you talked about a sick 2,000 big blinds deep heads up hand. So we're
Yeah,
excited.
that was very deep.
Oh, it was crazy. It was like one of the coolest hands we've had. I feel like all our guest hands have been kind of nutty. So we're you know, we're holding you to a high standard here.
Yeah, you
Okay,
better.
this is probably like one of the craziest hands I've ever played. It's actually like the biggest pot I've played.
All right.
So,
Well, but before we get into that, though, I do want to ask you. So you're in Texas, is that right?
yeah.
So like, where's the best place to play poker in Texas?
Best
big
place to
state of
play
Texas.
poker.
Yeah. Give
Well,
them a shout
the
out.
places that I usually frequent are TCH, Dallas, and then Poker House. But Poker House is closing down for now because of some legality issues. But Poker House action is really good. But, you know, TCH, I like TCH Dallas.
Have you been up to the other parts of the state with the rooms like the Lodge and, you know, the like 52 Social and the other ones that people talk
I
about?
haven't really played in Austin that much, but from like a bunch of people, a bunch of my friends, Rounders is probably like the most juicy place to play at. That's in San Antonio, right? It's a ton of action there. They have like a 1-2 uncapped game. I know people that like, you know, are making a $200 hourly in that game. It's actually nuts. Yeah.
So,
But
I just have to ask about this place being closed down. Is this the place that was like raking the pot?
no, this wasn't the place I was raking the pot.
Okay.
I think this place was closed down because legal issues pertaining to the fact that like they never changed before they became like a poker house, right? The property was like a strip club, and they never really changed the business on like the official papers from like strip club to a poker room. So there's like legal issues pertaining to that. From my understanding, I could be wrong, but
Well, the strip club zoning laws are very restrictive, as we know. So naturally, they really shouldn't have stepped in that one. I mean, that's just ABC error right there.
right. I mean, again, that might not be the whole issue, but that's like sort of pertaining to it.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people talk about regarding the like poker legality in Texas, right? Because it's like they're very much operating on a line.
It's a very gray line because TCH, at least the TCH Dallas right now, is undergoing like they're kind of battling with the Dallas County because Dallas County is trying to like stop card houses in Dallas. And they got like an extension the last time they were in front of like the court, but I don't know the current standing of it right now. But it's a very gray line for now.
I mean, it's Texas Hold'em, man. How can you try to ban it in Texas?
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. But they built a new TCH actually in Las Colinas, TCH Social, which is like a really good place. They have like a bar now, they have a restaurant and stuff. And the game is like catering more towards like recreational players. Like they don't offer a 2-5 match a stack game anymore because there's a lot of pros infestating that game, kind of making it like unfriendly for someone that wants to play 2-5, right? Like there's like $10,000 stacks there, so they made it like 2-5, 1.5K cap.
It's much more reasonable.
Which is still quite deep, by the way.
No, it's definitely deep.
That's interesting.
Definitely a lot less threatening for someone that just wants to play 2-5 than like you go to the table with $1,000 and there's like $4,000, $5,000 stacks on average.
Yeah, that's just whack. No, I mean, well, that's good. Yeah, I think a lot of places are trying to make that move. Like I heard Win has finally capped their games
Right.
All right, well, let's get into this hand here. So, is this an online hand or an in-person hand?
This was an online hand.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so this is like a home game type of hand.
Yeah, it was in an online home game. The game initially started as 1-1 with a $1 ante. Not a big blind ante, but like a $1 ante from everybody, right?
Right,
Wow.
so if this is a ring, if there's a full ring, then there's $11 of dead money in the pot.
There's $11 of dead money in the middle, so it's like a 5-6, right?
Yeah.
And everybody like bought in deep immediately. Like everybody bought in for like 1,000, so the game got pretty big pretty soon. I unfortunately found myself on like the cooler end of like a bunch of different spots, and I was stuck a lot in a 1-1 $1 ante online home game, right?
Okay.
And then eventually, games, it just reached like a ludicrous proportion when it became shorthanded, where people are like, okay, we don't have that much antes in the middle. Let's make it like 2-2 with a $2 ante.
2-2 with a $2 ante. And how shorthanded are you at this point?
We're like 5 max. We have 5 people.
So, well, that's still $14 of dead money.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the effective stack in this hand?
The effective stack is 5.3K.
Okay.
So
Wow.
it's probably playing like a 5-10 game. So it's like 500.
It's kind of like a 5-10.
500 big blinds, which is quite deep.
So what the standard open is like $30 or so.
So yeah, I would say so. I was opening to 20 from early position and opening to 25 from later positions.
Oh, okay, so not quite 30. Okay, so
yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like, I guess it's like it's kind of somewhere between 2-5 and 5-10. But like, our listeners have to understand that like playing between 2-5 and 5-10 online is a massive game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're seeing so many more hands per hour. Like, it's just the swings just get crazy. I mean, the effective stack is like the stacks are like 5K. That's insane.
That's insane.
I mean, on paper, you're 2,500 big blinds deep. So how does start us off? How does this hand start?
So there's a pretty good reg. I'm pretty sure like you guys have like known him, Kai.
Okay. Yep. Kai. Yep.
Yeah. So Kai opens the cutoff to 20, right? And folds to me. I'm in the small blind with queens. I make it 80. In retrospect, I should have made it bigger since we're this deep.
Do you have the suits of your queens by any chance?
Yeah, the queen of spades and the queen of hearts.
Perfect. Just helps with the display for our viewers. So cool. We're in small blind queen, make it 80. Sorry to interrupt.
In retrospect, I could have made it bigger, but then I remembered like there's another point that I went over with somebody. Like once you reach a certain level of depth, right? You want to make your opening sizes bigger, but when you reach like a deeper level, you want to keep your opening sizes the same. It's weird.
Yeah, I've heard this. This seems like some esoteric, beat pop math that we just have to listen to. So that sounds okay, 80.
And then in general, I'm like, do I really want to bloat the pot too much with like, I mean, queens is a really good hand. Don't get me wrong, but we're super deep, and I'm playing against like a really good reg. So like,
Yeah,
I made it 80.
I mean, especially like I don't know how you. I've never played with Kai, and I don't know how you perceive yourself relative to Kai. But like, like, if you perceive you're someone as like better than you, and you're out of position to them, you obviously don't want to play like a huge pot.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
I make it 80. He 4-bets me to 320.
Wow.
That's a huge 4-bet.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
A massive 4-bet in position, right? And I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm still not folding queens like a capable player. Like, if there's some players that I'm just gonna snap fold in this spot because it's always aces or kings, right? But Kai is not one of these players. He is capable, right?
Yeah.
He's capable of doing this with.
Unlike that knit corn, you'd probably only do this with aces.
I don't know about that one. I think there's like a hand forever ago where like he 4-bet me with like ace 4 offsuit BVB. It's just insane. That guy's interesting.
He used his randomizer, and that was the 0.7% chance that Pio gave him.
He rolled a D100.
He's a wizard.
Okay, so
yeah.
So all right, so he makes it 320. Well, Josh, you were gonna say something earlier, I think.
I was just gonna say, it's pretty basic level stuff, but obviously, it was just thinking about sizing, and I mean his sizing too is the deeper you get, it's like also, you're kind of incentivized to not like shovel money in with one pair because like if stacks are going in, like the odds that one pair is good just like plummet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kind of don't mind your 4x sizing, but anyway, he 4-bets and you basically decide we're just calling. Are you 5-betting anything this deep in a like 5-handed game?
No, I don't think so. I think there's spots where I will have 5-bets that I've been looking into because I've been getting screwed over, and like button versus small blind 4-bet pots where like button will 4-bet me. And like I looked at it on GTO Wiz stuff, and I'm supposed to be like 5-betting kings, aces, ace king suited there out of position. But like here, this incredibly deep, I'm not 5-betting really. And maybe I could 5-bet aces and kings for value, but like against a capable player like Kai, who I think will be folding jacks and 10s here and queens even if I 5-bet, right? I'd rather just call.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind just calling. I was kind of asking, and I also, to your point, button versus small blind is different than cutoff versus small blind, so would be less inclined to 5-bet here.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Anyways,
so it's like 640 in the middle.
650.
Yeah. And you go to
650 in the middle. The flop is 6-5 deuce rainbow. Pretty safe board for me, right?
You don't know the suits?
No, I don't know the suits.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
6-3 deuce rainbow.
6-5 deuce.
6-5 deuce rainbow.
Yeah.
So
perfect.
So ace 5 deuce, ace 5 has a pair. Rather is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
There you go. There's something.
3-4 has a straight, so really got to be worried about that portion of his.
Yeah, I gotta be worried about 3-4. I check. He bets 162, which is like around 20% pot.
Interesting. That seems. Is that small? I'm not familiar with like this level of depth, but that seems too small to me. I feel like it seems to me that as a 4-better, he should be, and like the fact that this board shouldn't really interact with either of your ranges at all. He seems like he should be allowed to just hammer this.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I don't know. Again, I am in your boat, Mike, where I have no idea how being deep stacked really affects this. But yes, I think like if he's just allowed to just start betting enormous because
he's trying to pile money in with his like aces, kings, right?
It just puts you in such an awful spot, like by the river.
Yeah, I mean, the 20% C bet, like a lot of his range will be like ace highs, right? So I think that's why he wants to go 20% here, because I don't think ace king, ace queen suited, ace jack suited, these hands that would 4-bet in this spot don't really want to like bet massive and get raised. or at least that's like my thinking process behind the 20% pot bet.
But what kind of raising are you allowed to do on this board? I mean, this board shouldn't interact with you at all.
I mean, it can, right? Because like I have more 6s and 5s than him. If I were ever to 3-bet these, and if I were to 3-bet these, I'm not folding 6s and 5s this deep to a 4-bet.
Sure, that's probably fine. But I guess like even so, I don't know that you would raise necessarily, right? I mean, maybe you would raise to this really small sizing actually, but I don't know that you would raise if he just bets really large. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're always, at least maybe you would sometimes, but I don't know that you're always raising 6s and 5s. I also think like he's out of your 3-bet defense range. Like what hands is he getting to fold with this sizing?
I don't think he's getting much to fold, but like I think his general range, right? I mean, if he has like aces or kings, he's at the top of his range, but like he has a lot of ace highs, so he has to like play his range here, right? Which, like, when over pair advantage is pretty equal here, I'd say, right? I think both of us have an equal amount of aces, kings, and queens.
Well,
right?
Maybe if you're never 5-betting, that's true, but but he doesn't know that, and theoretically you do have a 5-bet range. So
right.
I think his range is stronger than yours here. I'm pretty sure. Just maybe, like at least in theory. I don't know.
Okay.
I
think my take on this is that like our range is pretty neutral here, right? And when your range is pretty neutral, and no one has like a clear nut advantage on a board, you just typically range bet smaller. I could be wrong about that, but.
I think that is true in general, that when it's you're not supposed to bet large when you don't have a significant range advantage. But like I guess the question is like, does he have a range advantage here or not? But okay, I think we're getting too in the weeds. So he bets small. What do you do?
I just flat. I mean, no point in raising. I don't think so. It's like this deep. I don't think Wayne wants to be like shoveling money in the middle when he like 4x 4-bets me pre, right?
Yeah.
Like,
do you make anything of his 4-bet sizing? Like, do you think that means anything?
So when you 4-bet like that big, I'm like, okay, this is what I get for like, let's backpedal a little bit for like choosing a smaller 3-bet sizing this deep, because like he's been relatively balanced with his sizings throughout like the game from what I've noticed. Like he's been using larger sizings when people weren't like adjusting to like the anti-sizing properly. Right? Like, they would open to a sizing which probably doesn't exist. Like, they'd open to, like, half pot or something, and he would immediately punish it by, like, 3-betting 5x for, like, what his regular, what the pot would have been if the person opened regularly and he 3-bet, like, the sizing he was supposed to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, so I guess, like you said, nothing to do but call. I don't know, Josh. What do you think? Is there a to raising here?
I don't think so. I mean, we're pretty much going to probably fold out most hands, like probably all hands. Well, I guess if he's betting, like it's interesting to raise. If it kind of depends on what you think his 4-betting range looks like, because if you kind of mentioned that if you 5-bet, he's going to be folding out like a lot of his pairs under yours. And if you think he's 4-betting jacks and 10s a lot, then we probably are ahead of his. I mean, we're at least like even with his calling range. It kind of depends on how wide he's 4-betting, right? Like if he's 4-betting like 9s and 8s at all, then like that kind of makes me lean towards a raise here.
Yeah, so I didn't think that he would ever 4-bet 9s or 8s, right? It
Fair.
Doesn't really make sense. Like why would 9s and 8s want to 4-bet? Just want to see it flop.
Totally reasonable.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, when you see bets this small, a lot of his range is going to be ace highs, which, I could use some protection from. But at the same time, I have, like, queens this deep in a 4-bet pot. Just does not seem like, a good idea to just be shoveling money in the middle, because I could just be, like, owning myself.
Yeah, never a bad idea to not isolate. It's never a good idea to isolate ourselves against like the strongest portion of his range out of position, super duper deep. So totally on
Exactly.
board. Okay, so
what's the turn?
yeah.
The turn is the 4 of diamonds, right? So it brings in a backdoor flush draw. There's 2 diamonds on the board now. I can figure out the like suits really quickly for the flop if you guys want me to.
That's okay. I've got that. I actually already had included the 5 of diamonds, so backdoor flush draw is here, and we do not have a diamond. Right? That's the 2 relevant points. So the 6 and the deuce don't matter.
Yeah.
And obviously now there's a one-liner out there, a very unlikely one.
Yeah, like the only 3 that he should really have here is ace 3.
Yeah.
And like that's, I think, 4 betting at a pretty low frequency. I think ace 3 would just like call my 3 bet this deep in position.
It's probably mixing, but yeah, it should be very little ace 3. Yeah.
Ace 3 was like 20%, I think, when I checked. It's just like ace 3 doesn't really like to 4-bet bluff that often, since it just has like way less playability than ace 4 and ace 5 suited.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, okay, I assume you checked.
Yeah, I checked.
And what does he do?
And he checked back. Right?
Okay, I'd say that's a good sign because we probably don't have a ton of 3s in our range either. So to Mike's point and to our discussion on the flop, where it's basically this board doesn't really interact with either of our ranges. So when he checks back, it feels like we're gonna have the best hand at this point most of the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that aces and kings would keep on barreling here to get value from like a wide range of hands that I have to call here, like jacks, tens, queens. I thought those would still continue barreling turn, and it would be weird to trap here with aces or kings. That's what I was thinking in the moment, right?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. An interesting question, though, is what's the strongest hand you think he would check here?
The strongest hand he would check?
Yeah.
The strongest hand that he would check here on 6-5 deuce 4. Well, strongest hand he would check here would be ace 3. That's like the only straight that he would have.
And you think he would check that some portion of the time?
Yeah, he would check that some portion of the time, because at this point, like, I do have like queens, jacks, tens, kings, aces in my range, but like a good portion of my range will also be, ace king off, ace queen suited with a backdoor, ace jack suited with a backdoor, a lot of ace x, right? A lot of ace highs.
And he maybe would, with ace 3 specifically, would want you to like stab at the river.
Or
yeah,
hit.
Stab at the river, catch up.
Yeah, if you hit an ace, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's.
So
I think he can also.
Point, I'm like, go on.
I think he can also probably check back some diamond draws with showdown value. Like if he has ace king, we were just talking about checking back actually flush draws with showdown value earlier in the podcast. So perfect callback where if he's got a suited like Broadway of diamonds, especially an ace high where he might be bets some portion of the time, he can probably check back and realize his equity.
Right.
That's a decent.
Yeah, probably ace king or ace queen of diamonds are checked here a decent amount.
That would make sense. Yes.
Yeah. So you check back ace king, ace queen of diamonds, but yeah. So he checks back. All right. So then, what is the river?
The river's a complete brick, right? It's a 2 of hearts. And
Totally.
I decided to bet on this card, right? There's like 974 in the pot. I go for around half pot. Well, I bet 500, right? Targeting, ace king high, which has showdown value here. Some of the bluffs that he could have, like ace 5, that, has a pair here, jacks and tens, right? That's the range that I'm targeting at this point.
Okay.
And we're then put in a terrible spot. I get raised to $2,900.
Wow. So for anyone who's just listening, just to quickly review the action, we're playing 5-handed in a 2-2 game with a $2 ante. So there's $15 of dead money basically. The cutoff is a good reg and opens to 20. We 3-bet to 80. He 4-bets to 320. We just call with queen of spades, queen of hearts. We checked a 6-5 deuce rainbow flop and called a 20% pot c-bet. The turn is a 4 that brings in a backdoor diamond draw and checks through. And now the river is a brick. It pairs the bottom card. It does not bring in the flush. We bet 500 into 975, and he raises to 2,900 off about a 4.8k stack. And this is a terrible spot. Back to the hand. You are absolutely right.
Yeah, I'm in misery at this point, right? I asked the person that's like hosting the game to like pause it for a bit so that I have to like time to think about this decision. And I'm like, dude, does he play aces or kings like this? Right? That's like the first question I ask myself, right? Because like those are the two most obvious value candidates that I think about in a 4-bet pot, right?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick too, I just want to think about like, you have to call here 2,400, right? Is that right? And
Yeah, I have to call 2,400 more.
To win
1,900.
No,
to win 2,900 plus 1,500, right? To win 45, is that right? Basically.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
So you're getting like slightly worse than 2 to 1.
Yeah, I'm not getting good odds to call here.
Yeah, so you're wondering like, would he do this with aces and kings? I mean, that's an interesting question.
That's the first thought that came into my head, right? Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think he takes this line with aces or kings. Like, I think he definitely bets turn, right?
I guess I don't see why he would take this line with aces and kings. Like, it's not like he's getting more money in this way than he would have, right? If he bets turn and then bets river, I think he gets more money in anyway.
Yeah, but then I started thinking, right? Like, he took a similar trap line to me when he was out of position to me, where, like, he checked a boat on the river, and I bet, and he, like, check-raised me after, like, checking 2 streets. And I'm like, I mean, he's shown that he's balanced, and that he definitely could have value here, right? But I think these hands in particular, aces and kings, that, you know, might need some protection, I don't think they would do this. And especially aces and kings, like, they don't want, like, tens to see, like, a queen, ace, or a king on the river, right? So they would continue betting turn to, you know, avoid me seeing scare cards.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's, like, what is the strongest hand you would ever have here is also an interesting question, because I think he's got to be thinking about that if he's, you know, raising so large. Like, I think the strongest hand you ever have is aces, right?
I think the strongest hand I have here is sixes.
But aren't you betting more than half pot with sixes? Are you betting because you have the nuts if you have sixes?
Here once he checks back the turn, right?
Well, I mean, if you think he's checking back ace 3 some of the time, like, I mean, we can talk, and you know, and I mean, if you think he's basically checking back like ace 3 and like bluffs, then like if we're betting, we probably have to
back queens, which you know here. If he had queens, he might check it back on the turn too. Jack tens.
I think queens, jacks, and tens all definitely check back on the turn, and betting huge here is probably like too greedy of a bet. Target like a range that has a lot of these pairs and also has like a lot of like ace king highs, right? That check back turn. Like, I think ace 3 is like a very small part of his range.
Sure.
And you know, we probably can like bet huge to target those, but I think since it's such a small part of this range, and you know, a lot more of this range comprises of like these strong ace highs and these strong pairs that have like a ton of showdown value, I think I would have sixes that bet this size for that reason.
I mean, fair enough, and I mean, you are gonna, of course, check raise the flop probably some amount of the time with sixes, but you know, you will. Point taken, you would have sixes here for this sizing.
But yeah, I would definitely have aces and kings here.
You are going to rip it with sixes here, right? So that's not a hand you can call with anyway. So it's like, what's the best hand you would have to call with here?
Best hand to call with definitely aces.
Yeah.
Definitely aces.
It's interesting too that like, so you could have aces, right? You could have kings. I mean, for him to take this sizing, it's so weird. I mean, it's really sort of bizarre.
I'm like, is he even really repping over pairs at this point?
Well, something I would say here, we haven't really discussed his bluffs yet, but I would say, you know, aces, kings, and queens without a diamond is kind of important, because, you know, if he's got ace X of diamonds, you know, like ace king, ace queen, ace jack of diamonds that he checked back the turn with. You know, he can, you know, maybe he's kind of thinking, you know, I have an ace, so I'm blocking aces. So yes, I'm obviously blocking like his bluffs because I have 2 diamonds, but like, you know, that it's blocking aces, so it's a solid bluff candidate to rep it. It's, you know, kind of interesting. You know, without at least not the point there being just, you know, us not having a diamond is definitely a positive attribute of our hand.
Mm-hmm. But like, I'm like, is this 6x raise size on the river? Do 8 overpairs even take this line? Right.
And I think you're right that they don't. I really don't think they do. It seems very odd to me. It just seems like a really, like, maybe an overpair is played this way some percentage of the time, but it's certainly like, of the 12 combos of aces and kings that exist, maybe he would do this like with 3 of them.
What about ace deuce? What about the 2 combos of ace deuce?
That's what I was thinking about, right? So now let's think about other value he has besides aces and kings. And I'm like, okay, ace deuce and ace 3, right?
Yep.
So if I don't think he's doing this with aces and kings, I lose to ace deuce and ace 3, which is like ace deuce and ace 3 suited. It's a pretty small portion of his range, right? So there's 2 combos of ace deuce suited, right? And I think he can definitely, you know, do this with ace deuce suited, because like, how do I ever have trips here, right?
Right.
And how do I really even ever have a straight here? Like, he has the nuts with ace deuce.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I think he's definitely allowed to take this sizing with ace deuce. I just, I think it's, I don't know. I kind of want to fold here because I, like, as much as you said he's like a good player, and I believe you. I mean, I don't know him very well, but I believe you that he is capable. Like, there's so few bluffs here that make much sense. Like, like I actually think like ace king might just call you. I mean, it can be like he can have the best hand here with ace king. You know, so. I mean, ace-king of diamonds specifically blocks the flush draws, and so probably should be taken this way. Ace-queen of diamonds similarly. But, like, so, like, those are bluffs. But, like, other than that, I think those are bluffs that are sort of obvious. But, God, you know, he has, like, the value range here is so narrow. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird, too, though, because, like, there's 4 combos of ace 3, there's 2 combos of ace deuce suited, right? But to your point, Aath, you know, those, as you pointed out, are kind of the weaker end of the like 5-bet bluffs, right? Or 4-bet bluffs. And he's more likely to do that with like ace 5 suited or ace 4 suited, whereas ace 3 and ace deuce are probably done less. So of those 6 combos, you know, we probably only don't want to give him like all 6 at full frequency, right? So that's another aspect where the value range is even thinner than it appears if you kind of give him that, if you think he's kind of playing close to optimal and not 3-betting those hands, or not 4-betting those hands a whole ton.
Yeah, no, his value range is pretty thin here, and then I started thinking about his bluffs, right? And given this line, like what I was thinking about, it looks like a hand that, you know, has picked up showdown value or has showdown value, and then upon facing a river bet, realizes it doesn't really have much showdown value versus the range I'm betting on the river.
So could he be doing this with like jacks or tens? You think?
I'd probably be doing this with jacks.
No, do you think he'd be taking this line with jacks or tens, where when you make a bet?
I wasn't really thinking about jacks and tens, right?
Like
I
ace
think
4?
I was thinking about ace 4, ace 5, ace king, ace queen.
Interesting.
Yeah, those were the bluffs that I had for him.
I think it's interesting though. I don't think ace king and ace queen are very likely, besides of diamonds specifically. Like, if I'm holding those hands, especially the ace king, I think I'm probably just gonna call, especially getting getting 3-1 on the river. Like, you can have a lot of air here. I think.
Right.
I think you can. You know, I think you can have just like. I think ace queen starts to get questionable, but ace king, like you could have ace queen, ace jack, ace 10 with a backdoor that called the flop, right? You just So you can also have like suited connectors with a backdoor that like had maybe a straight draw somewhere. Like you can have all of that stuff. So I think if I have ace king in his spot, like unless it is specifically ace king of diamonds, I think I'm just calling.
I don't know how much showdown value ace king actually has here though. I mean, yeah, like I would probably be bluffing worse ace highs and suited connectors that I arrived to the river with, right? Like, But what suited connectors do I have here? 6-7 is a pair. 7-8 is the nuts, basically. I think I'm folding 9-10 pre. Like the only 4-5 is also like, 4-5 is a pair.
Yeah, you're right.
Really turning that into a bluff.
There's probably not really suited connectors here, but I do think like worst ace high. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you're right that he might be turning some portion of his ace highs into a bluff here. Certainly. I mean, he does block your aces, which of course you're snapping this off with the aces. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I thought about this. I'm like, okay, it just doesn't. I don't think he has an overpair here. I don't think an overpair takes this line right. Like I'd be more inclined to fold if he like bet, and then bet again, because that just looks like aces or king, right?
Yeah, it is interesting given what you've said about him being trappy, because like it isn't impossible that he does this with aces and kings.
It's not impossible, but I think it's unlikely with an overpair.
Yeah, it's so weird because to Mike's point, it's like it doesn't get more money in. Like it's just weird. Yeah.
Yeah, and with this 6x sizing, I just feel like he's repping stronger than an overpair here. That's like the value range that he's trying to portray, right? Because I have aces and kings here as well.
Yeah, but if you think he would even do this with aces like a little bit of the time, it does add more value combos to pretty narrow value range. So it matters. I don't know. This has got to be a pretty marginal spot. Like I think it. Like I don't know. Maybe you just flip a coin here.
Yeah, no, I was in agony, and then I was like, okay, ace 5, ace 4, ace queen, and then some combos of ace king, right? That he could be turning into a bluff here.
Sure.
And eventually, should I like tell the decision I made?
Yeah, I think so.
I called because it's villain that's definitely capable of finding bluffs here. We call, and then we win against ace 6 of clubs.
Ace 6 of clubs. Wow, nice call, man.
Thank you.
I guess it I guess that does kind of make sense for a bluff raise for him, because to your point about how, he might also not raise over pairs because we do have like sets in our range, and so ace 6 blocks aces and blocks sets and unblocks diamonds. Like that's probably a pretty good one.
Yeah, no, it was a crazy bluff by him. I'm like, why? I mean, I was thinking about like why he turned that hand into a bluff, right? And he's like, yeah, I just don't think you're betting ace king here. I don't think my hand is good enough to call with just ace 6. So I thought I could fold you off like queens and jacks and maybe kings.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mike though that like this hand is probably fine to call with. Like it just beats so much crap in your range. Like,
like this is right. He's getting 3-1, right? Like so. Is 1/4 of your range bluffs here?
Well, he's getting 2-1, right? He's getting 2-1, and he needs like 33% equity.
So on the river, you bet half pot, right?
So he gets 2-1, and he has to be good 30-ish% of the time, right?
He has to call 500 to win 1500. He's getting 3-1.
I think the odds don't quite. That's okay. We'll talk about this later.
Yeah. No, whatever. I mean, I think you have enough bluffs there that he can just call with ace 6. Quite big. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, he thinks that I'm under bluffing this spot, right? Which is why he jammed. He thinks I mainly have value here. I mean, I disagree with him on that. I don't have many bluffs here. My bluff here will probably be ace queen suited, ace jack suited, right? That I call with because I'm deep, and then I don't have enough showdown value trying to fold out ace king.
And then I guess it's
right.
Well, I guess it's not unreasonable then if he really doesn't think that you have a set and he has an ace, so he's blocking the aces, then it's not terrible to raise, because if he thinks that like your hands are mostly value that you're gonna fold or bluffs that you're gonna fold, then I do kind of understand the raise. Like if the point if the point is that you have more bluffs, that's probably not a point against raising. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I guess he is blocking like the thickest value portion of your range, so it does make some sense. I don't know. I don't hate his play at all. I mean, I think it's
I thought it was a really good play.
Very cool and creative spot.
Yeah, I was put in like a gut wrenching spot with queens.
Well, great call.
It was pretty thick, and like I probably would fold there against like 95, 96% of all players because they're just not finding bluffs there. But shout out Kai. He's definitely one of the best players I played with, and he is capable of finding these bluffs.
Yeah, no, it's a very good bluff. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we got to wrap it up here. But thanks for coming on again, Aath.
For sure, no problem.
Another off the rails hand. If we need just crazy big hands with wild action and awesome bluffs, we know who to call.
Yeah, no, there's some insane pots from time to time. Yeah. All right, thanks for having me on, Mike and Josh.
Of course, our pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in and listening to us talk about our hands. We're very excited to have you along. You should press that like button if you're excited. You should leave a comment if you're excited or angry, and you should press the subscribe button also.
Yeah, get those numbers up. We'd love it. It makes us feel good things.
For sure.
Thanks.
All right. Good night, guys.
All right. Good night, everybody.